These are great, everybody. I hope this is your first visit. If it isn't, enjoy it. This is really nice. So we'll start with public comment on all items. So that means you can talk about anything you want to. This is the time to come forward, give us your name and address, and you can literally talk about anything that pertains to the city council. Is there anybody that would like to come forward? Come on up to the speaker. And if there's a whole bunch of you, come get in line so we know who you are. Good evening, sir.
In Albuquerque, New Mexico, I marched, rallied, and petitioned. My campaign was called Fans, Freedom All Nation Spirit. And the movement was for an encampment known as the Great Canoe, bringing back traditional values and ideas that our ancestors so dearly held. Encampments that they thrived in for thousands of years before we were conquered. Now look at us. Look at this continent. It's going to hell. It's been really dug up and it's getting worse. I'm concerned for my people who you consider as nomads. I'm here to tell you they're piss nads. They don't appreciate being out there. They don't have a chance to make it in this world. You offer them programs. These are European style programs. They can't fit into it. An encampment will free my people, not just mine, yours, and other races. All is welcome. This is Fans, Freedom, All Nation Spirit. We're all God's offsprings. Perfected love. Love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. Love his offsprings. Treat each other as you'd like to be treated. You go to heaven on Judgment Day, you believe in God? God's going to say, least you did to me, least you did to my brothers, you did to me. I'm trying to protect. I'm trying to get the people out the streets. I did this in Albuquerque. The city council endorsed this ideology. I got to be able to put a camp. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm sorry. But this system, broken system, that's just the easy way of saying it. This system is pure evil. We were conquered by evil men. They created an evil system called the Constitution that works for them. And this evilness is getting worse and worse and worse. And the young and the old are suffering that aren't your color, but they're God's offsprings as much as you are. Jesus died for them as much as he died for you. And as you guys made that Bible to them, you put a traditional wall there by calling them savages, my people savages, saying this Bible says it's okay to kill you, take your land, but we want you to serve our God. But I'm here to perfect love for God. I need your permission and I need space to do this. Can I have it? For an encampment.
Why don't we can visit afterwards about this? Not right at this time, no, sir. Not at this time, but afterwards, no, not a problem. I'll visit with you plenty.
I'm in a lot of pain. How long is it going to be?
We have only 2 items on this. It won't last very long.
Good. Holy.
Anyone else would like to come forward? This is your opportunity. No one? No one else? Okay. We'll close the public comment and move to item number 1, draft consolidated planning findings and strategic review. And guess who's up? Brenda.
I guess I have to get really close to this.
Closer.
Closer. That close? No. Closer. Like one finger away. Wow. Okay. Well, if I mess up, just, give me the signal. Okay, to get closer. So my name is Beckett, and I am the manager of the Community Development Division. And Wyatt is, he's participating remotely. So let me see here. actually, am I in the right place? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little refresher. That actually, let me see. Is that a little, that's not even a little bit bigger, is it? Oh, well. So this is our drafted timeline that we came up with, I think it was last August, and today we're at the big purple star right here. This is the work session where we're looking at drafted findings and our board strategy. This is, it's when you get close, it's really loud, but then, yeah. All right, adjustments could be made. So, and then also to look at council strategies and priorities in relation to the CDBG and home drafted findings. So I actually, in your packets, you'll find some data points that support each of these con plan findings. And there is no surprise that we are still facing a considerable housing cost burden in the city of Billings. Unfortunately, the data that we have that HUD provides to us is really old. It is from 2020. So we do, I had struggles completely throughout the entire 130-page document trying to find more recent data and data relative to the pandemic impact and long-term issues that Billings has experienced since that time. But we know that we have a housing cost burden. We don't know to what degree as of 2025, but I think we can all state that it is pretty significant. I'm so sorry, this is so terrible. Can I just like shout at you instead? Oh, Muni 7. Well, all right then. We also have a lack of housing availability and variety. We already know that we have a need for supportive services in the community and that we have a need for neighborhood improvements as well. So the big piece of the consolidated plan that we need to pay attention to that will encompass a 5-year planning period is everything that the city council and the constituents would like to do with this funding. Will it fit within these goals? Expanding, improving access, availability, quality, value, et cetera, of affordable housing, services for vulnerable populations, including both public facilities and public services, and then neighborhood revitalization. So we're looking at a 5-year span, and we did put forth for a family justice center and domestic violence services and interventions, food security, and a number of other initiatives, and we did not receive any applications from outside organizations. So we do have to run, run some programs specific to that staff are going to roll out in order for us to meet our expenditure deadlines for both CDBG and home. And so we did put forth applications to fund affordable housing development, first-time home buyer foreclosure, AmeriCorps Vista. We already have home ARP services that are available and ongoing. And I think that's just our current year applications. And we've talked about before being able to open up another allocation session later on if City Council wants to, and we have indications from the community that they're ready to move on specific projects, but we have to be able to start allocating funding and moving forward with those allocations right after July 1. So that's a pretty big issue for us. Oops. There we go. We do have a really simple survey that's being circulated. I think that TAM gets, gosh, this was 350 respondents as of March 13th, I think, and she just got another 25 responses today. So we did separate this also into other categories. Oops. Yeah, other categories here. So there's infrastructure. Street lights were the #1 request on that. And this is like they're weighted. I think you guys have the entire consolidated plan survey results in your packets today, followed by water and sewer, streets, curb, gutter, sidewalks, and then park septed. Health and mental health care are by far the #1 concern for constituents in Billings, followed by services for veterans and military, and then K through 12 education, et cetera. Home buyer on the housing front is our biggest, the constituents' biggest request. Home buyers or home repair systems. I think that is home repair weatherization. I'm sorry, my chart is a little too small there. and then foreclosure, building, rental, and ownership housing. And then we have this brilliant idea to do some solar and energy efficiency kinds of programs at some point in the next 5 years, but that didn't receive as high ratings as the other programs did. So today we're just updating you with our goals and programs and activities to get your feedback on that before we fill out the remainder of the consolidated plan. We actually left those sections of the consolidated plan blank because with the big block that says we will update after the March 17th plan, because it's an awful lot of work in about a dozen areas of the consolidated plan to make sure we're on the right track. And then we would circulate it again to the public and social service providers for feedback. And we have a big preface at the beginning that says, we don't have great data for this. This is what we have. Please excuse any errors and omissions if we haven't mentioned an organization that's providing something or that we haven't identified a community need. And then you have in your packet also in the memo, it talks about some of the neighborhood task force meetings that we'll be attending. Tam is going to close the survey packet on March 31st, and then we'll update the plan then again with some specific data relative to those findings. And then again, we'll be here at April 14th and April 28th for a couple more council meetings. So we do have some members of the community here today. We have my staff is back here, Tam Rodeer, Harley Collins, and Jordan Langton. And then also we have a board member, Allie is here. And also some members of the lending community who we've been conversing about through over time. So, well, gosh, it's been like 6 months or so, hasn't it, since Dina left. So been conversing. So I'm sure they would like to say a few things if you'd like to hear from them.
Yes, certainly.
All right.
And make sure you give us your name.
Hello. My name is Tammy Hartman, and I'm a real estate lender at Stockman Bank, and this is my lending partner, April Malakas, and our realtor partner, Adori Baxter. And first of all, we just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come here and just voice, our thoughts on, obviously we're mortgage lenders and she's a realtor, so we are in the business of helping people buy homes. And I've been working at Stockman Bank for nearly 24 years now, and City of Billings has always had assistance programs available for first-time home buyers, and I use them frequently. Probably one of the top lenders in Billings that does use them. They always replenish in July. We always and for as long as I can remember, they get used up right away, and then we're waiting patiently for July when they come available again. Since COVID hit, obviously it's changed quite a bit. Home prices have skyrocketed. Interest rates were certainly very low in the beginning, and of course that pressured the home prices to increase. And now we have a double whammy with high interest rates and high sales prices. And it is hard for first-time home buyers to be able to afford their homes now and meet that dream of home ownership. Obviously, like the first gentleman that was speaking upon for the homeless, I mean, there's definitely a need from the homeless all the way to those that are looking for rentals. And for, I could see what you're saying, Brenda. I get a little closer and the whole thing changes, so bear with me. There's a need for those that are renting, and there's a need for people that are wanting to buy homes. And I guess I am here representing Stockman Bank, and I'll certainly try to keep my personal opinions out of that for that purpose. Obviously, you can probably figure that out what that is, but I can attest to over all my years of sitting in my office and working with first-time home buyers and visiting, because I make friends. I've made a lot of friends over the years, and I've helped people buy homes, and then I've been here long enough where I'm now helping their children buy homes. And we visit a lot, especially the first-time home buyers, that they are they want to take that step. They no longer want to rent. And yes, there is a need for more rentals. There's a need across the board. There's a housing shortage, definitely. but we need to keep the opportunity there for those that are tired of renting and having neighbors on the other side of their walls. They want to buy a home and look forward to the summer having a private backyard and inviting their friends and family over to have a backyard barbecue. They want to establish a home front for their children to grow up and have a home base and go to their school that's maybe a couple blocks down the street. And unfortunately, in today's economy, we can get people, first-time home buyers, qualified for housing, but the biggest hurdle is saving money. And because everything is so much more expensive and they're trying to make ends meet. And and I can attest that so many times that having the assistance programs out there to cover that gap of down payment assistance is what makes a difference for a first-time home buyer to go from a rental apartment complex or a home into home ownership. Now, I appreciate, let me visit with you about this, but Dari, I'll let her speak because it wasn't so long ago. Gosh, it's, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to help Adari and her husband buy their first home, and they did use the down payment assistance through City of Billings, and she would be a perfect person to attest to that. So I'll let her visit a bit about that.
Hello, I'm Adari Baxter, and I am a realtor here in Billings. I just wanted to talk about that. As Tammy touched on, she did help me and my husband buy our property in 2018, and we did use that assistance. Without that assistance, we would not have been able to become homeowners. It's just not realistic for a lot of first-time homebuyers to save up tens of thousands of dollars for down payment, closing costs, all of those costs. It really is a burden in today's society, and all of that costs. 80% of my clients are first-time homebuyers. April and I teach a first-time homebuyer class quarterly, and almost every single one of my first-time homebuyers use some kind of assistance to help them purchase a home. But first-time homebuyers are mostly millennials. Millennials are going to be the biggest generation in the U.S., most populous. So they will have the greatest impact on real estate for the foreseeable future. That's who's going to be looking for homes, and it's an affordability issue for them. Why it's an affordability issue for them? It's because they have unfavorable debt-to-income ratios, mostly just because of college debt and things of that sort. But their median salary is about $40,000. So you can imagine how hard it is to save that money for down payments, that money for closing costs. 51% of them want to buy a home, and I'm sure more of that would be a percentage if it was more affordable. That's all I have to say.
Hi, everybody. I don't know. Does this sound good? I'm just going to touch on a couple of points that these two ladies didn't touch on. Tammy talked a little bit about reducing the upfront costs and how these first-time homebuyer assistance programs help with down payment and closing costs. Not only that, but a lot of times when we use these programs, it can also help with the mortgage terms itself. For example, it can help first-time homebuyers get a better, a more favorable interest rate on their loans. So that's another good thing. Also, what we've seen, and in the past when Tammy and I used first-time homebuyer assistance programs through City of Billings, a portion of that program requirement to get those assistance funds is to take a first-time homebuyer class that's approved by HUD. This is helpful for first-time homebuyers specifically because it helps walk them through the purchase that they're going through so they have a better understanding of their finances. And then we see 5, 10, 15 years down the road, they have a good understanding of making strong financial decisions because they took those classes and built that foundation. So not only, I'll close it with not just the first-time homebuyer assistance programs, but we also support the foreclosure acquisition and rehab program. A lot of times with these first-time homebuyers, they're in a certain cost, and the cost of that house, yes, it is in their price range, but the condition of the house usually doesn't meet the requirements for financing. Or when you find a house that's in good condition, it's usually outside of their, pre-qualified cost. And so where's that balance in between? So the foreclosure rehab program is nice because it takes that house, puts it into the good condition that it can qualify for financing, but it's also at an attainable purchase price that's not overwhelming for first-time homebuyers where they can also use assistance for it. So anyways, we appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us and hear our opinion on everything. And I guess if you have any questions, I don't know.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for these nice council member Neese?
Yes, I had to ask a question because Dan wanted me to. Just real quick on these first-time home buyer loans that you do. Do you notice if their delinquency rate is any different than just a standard loan? Have you done any research on that to know how what delinquency rate those loans are compared to other loans?
Our delinquency rate, we go, it's less than 1% now for us for first-time homebuyer programs, specifically through the city of Billings.
Okay, so on those particular loans, that's the lending we do. But you guys you guys do the lending, right? Yeah. So on those loans that you use the first-time home buyer assistance, are those loans any more delinquent than any other programs? Do you track
I
that?
can attest that they are not. We I can only speak for Stockman Bank, and our underwriting is such that we look at it in that we do not want to put first-time home buyers in a bad position. So we do have a conservative underwriting process. And as far as what I have seen, there is not any difference in delinquency rates for first-time home buyers with those receiving the assistance as compared to other
Okay,
programs.
thank you.
Any other questions? Council member Gulick.
Could you just, what are the terms, or like what kind of benefit does the program provide in terms of assistance? Or you just kind of review that real quick.
They're $10,000 to $15,000 per property, unless we do another study. Maybe we need to do a pricing study again. And they're zero interest, zero payment, unless a person moves out or sells the property, and then they repay the city in full. And this is the program that funded all of our program income revenues for the home program that was about $500,000 for several years in a row. So it's an amazing investment, and we get that funding back fairly quickly. Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about the City of Billings funds is we usually pair those up with Montana Board of Housing, which is an investor strictly for first-time home buyers. And their interest rate is always typically lower than what you see out on the other secondary market investors. So for instance, if I were to quote rough rates today, you would be looking at, and typically we look at FHA financing, which is a government insured program. Within here, within the city limits, FHA is typically right around 6.25% today. But going with Montana Board of Housing, their regular bond rate is 5.5%. But if you pair that up with the City of Billings assistance program, it drops to 5.25%. And so that's why when April was stating that there is a benefit for combining those two programs, it does greatly benefit because obviously rates are typically higher, over the long run. I mean, but as a first-time home buyer, you do get the benefit of that lower rate.
Any other questions? Thank you, ladies, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Brenda,
So
have
much.
any more discussion?
Just thank you so much. I kind of expected a light bulb, and you brought a lightning bolt. So thanks for that information. Mm-hmm. So we also have a CD board member. Do you want to say anything, Allie?
With the first-time home buyer, I'm Allie Pastora. With the first-time home buyer, just remember that when you're changing someone's house, you're changing the neighborhood, and everybody's affected all the way around with anybody that has ownership in their house, and they're responsible for that property. Thank you.
Anything else, Brenda?
That's it. I just wanted to make sure we're on the right track and that you're okay with our findings and goals and how we're looking at the projects and activities for the next 5 years. Did I miss
Are
anything?
you going to come back to the council when?
April 14th.
April 14th. Any questions? Council member Neese.
Hey, Brenda. Ooh, wow. Okay, Brenda. Oh man, Brenda, is there anything that you need from us tonight as far as decision making? Because work session, this is a great presentation information, but is there anything that we need to recommend to you?
Yes, if I've missed anything, it would be better to know today so I can write it into the comp plan goals and priorities. There's literally a dozen places that information has to be about this kind of spread when you're looking at housing and services for vulnerable populations or neighborhood revitalization. Is there anything that you've thought of that you would fund that could not be covered in those 3 goals?
Councilmember Owen.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Brenda, I do have some feedback that I'm just going to give kind of a little scattershot here. But first of all, I want to acknowledge, thank you for adjusting your schedules. I had asked that you did that and you did it. You've given us time between the public hearing and the final submission. You did everything we asked on the schedule. So thank you. I know that was a little bit of a lift to juggle. Here are my assorted thoughts on the consolidated plan strategies, and we're setting forth our vision for the next 5 years, right? Okay. You mentioned that the data on housing you thought was a little dated. The Department of Labor and Industry can give you more current data. I can help connect you to their Data and Economic Bureau if you need more current numbers, because they can do that. And I also thought the homeless count was quite low.
I thought it was too. We used to get 600 to 800 people, and over the last several years, it's been under 300 people. So I'm not exactly sure.
Is that coming from the state or from
Yeah.
the point in time?
It's the state Montana Continuum of Care point in time survey.
Yeah, that concerns me that it seems like it's, does that risk our funding at all?
Not on the CDBG and home side, but I don't know exactly. Montana gets several $1,000,000 for the Continuum of Care funds, and Billings does not do very well in that arena. So 6 to 7% historically, as long as I can remember, 20 years. So I don't know if that will impact. They always say, well, if you have higher numbers, you're going to get more funding, but I've never actually seen that happen.
Okay, so in general, my thoughts are I continue to believe, I've said this before, it's no surprise, I don't support the foreclosure program. I just don't think we do enough houses for it to be important. I think there's other things that we should put that money into. So I would continue to push back on the foreclosure flip program. I'm a little concerned with the supportive services. I'm not concerned about us doing them. I'm concerned about what I read to be an approach last cycle where we funded multiple organizations to all do the same thing. Instead of saying, you're the food security people, you're the utilities people, you're the this, we seem to give them all money to do the same thing. And that strategy worries me, particularly if we're not having robust participation in HIMAS. If all of the participants are robustly in HIMAS and we're tracking duplication, then maybe that's okay. But I'm very concerned on supportive services that we don't have strategies for it. So I think what I'd like to see when we do supportive services is ask them to try to link to a policy goal rather than just having it. So for example, if we're going to do utilities or security deposits, maybe the applicants come in and say, we're going to focus on utilities for parents trying to get into a house for reunification, or we're going to focus on security deposits for people who are leaving a shelter, or like we have a policy goal that we're trying to accomplish rather than just all the nonprofits being funded to do the exact same things. That duplication concerns me a little bit. I don't mind a little duplication because people need choice in services, but I don't want us to continue feeding the kind of divisions in the homeless social service sector that I see right now. I don't think we should include job training as a supportive service at all. There's WIOA dollars in the community. There are other sources for job funding. So I would take that one completely out of our list and let the people who do job training and have federal dollars for job training continue to do that. And you had mentioned, Brenda, that we didn't have applicants for food security. So is there a reason we still have it on here?
Just because you mentioned it as a city council that it was one of your priorities and you wanted us to look into that.
Into food security? But we don't have people in the community interested in doing that.
No.
Okay. And do you feel like the outreach was good enough?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the people who could have applied knew they could have applied and they didn't.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I won't speak for other council members, but I would be, go ahead, Wyeth.
If I could just add to that, and we've had some internal discussions on that. On the food security side, we didn't have anyone apply. That's absolutely correct. We have continued to be in conversation with Healthy by Design and the group that's been working in the south side area to try to get, change the food desert situation down there, which also I guess touches on food, would touch on food security. but they've continued. They developed a business plan. They did a lot of things to try to get a small market to do a test down there, and that still has not come to fruition. So I would just add, like, that's the one area where we know there's been some resources and effort focused, but we haven't seen that take off. So anyway, that is a conversation we've just been having internally, but yeah, there hasn't been an application that we've had for that.
Okay, that's helpful context. Thanks, Wyeth. And then lastly, I would just raise the same concern about doing home repairs. Sorry, I would raise the same concern about doing home repairs as with the supportive services. Let's try to encourage applicants to link that to something that they're wanting to accomplish. You know, if we're moving substandard housing to standard housing or something, let's just try to connect that to an actual policy goal when we open up the applications. Those would be my pieces of feedback. Thanks.
Any further questions? Anyone? Any comments, Brenda? Anything else you want to say? You did good.
Good evening, folks. Okay. Too close. Okay, got it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm having a passion, but I was sitting there at Econoprint, and I was printing out my first version of the cemetery walking tour. And I thought, well, why don't I try to sell some ad space in this, right? So you're looking at my second edition there, in which I did print up, get some sponsors, and I was able to, through those sponsorships, able to cover the cost of printing those walking tours. And then I'm like, well, you know, Parks prints up a lot of stuff, and we have a lot of things. So maybe we could do something like that in the parks. And then I just kept, well, we have lots of stuff, so why can't we get sponsors for all our things? And that's kind of where this came from. So I just want to share that little backstory with you before I got started. So like I said, we have lots of things and stuff, and you know, all sorts of park areas, playgrounds, basketball courts. Our employees travel about 200,000 miles on the road each year, traveling around Billings. And I believe those are all opportunities for potential sponsors through sponsor recognition to achieve or to reach their customers. So I'm here tonight to kind of, and just completely upfront, this is an idea right now. Not much planning has been gone into it. A little bit of thought, but really just an idea of mine. And I'm seeking guidance, certainly would be welcome. But more importantly, I think support to dedicate the staff time, support the youth, support a program like this to dedicate the staff time that it was going to take to go into to developing this. So just a quick idea of what, you know, how I think this program should be developed. You know, parks are going to identify opportunities and kind of create a sponsorship catalog. You know, identify, you know, the levels of sponsorship and what we think would be appropriate for that. Create an endowment. I think endowment's the right avenue because as long as the stock market does what it's done for the last 100 years, we should be able to have a funding source that we can kind of count on going forward. You know, sponsorships may dip and throughout the years, but if we're pulling from an endowment, that's going to remain relatively consistent. And then approve the sponsors. Actually, Council Member Nees asked me about this today. That's something we're going to have to think about, right? Because can we, you know, there's going to be some sponsors that we may not want to be in business with. It's not in the best interest of the city. can we legally say no to people, or how do we do that? So that's definitely something that we'll have to look at pretty close. And then, place and maintain sponsorship acknowledgement. The other part of that is, this is going to take, to be successful, it's going to take a dedicated person or people to do that. And within the organization now, we just don't have the capacity to do that. So what I would like, Brandon Schmidt's vision of how I'd like this to go, is maybe Partners for Parks. They're able to hire an executive director. Part of that salary is coming from a cut of these sponsorship deals that they generate. And then, but certainly it doesn't have to be Partners for Parks. That's what I think would be most beneficial, but we can certainly do an RFP, go out there, ask marketing companies, to give us a proposal on what they would charge and how they would manage it. Both those certainly, I think, valid avenues. But they would, develop that sponsorship agreement and, identify and seek out sponsors, do the social media recognition, all that stuff, kind of keep those sponsors happy and get them recognized. And then, like I said, receive a percentage of the sponsorship funds to pay for expenses of salary. And then the sponsor, they would need to obviously pay the funding that they agreed to, and then approve any acknowledgement designs we designed to place in our parks. I guess another part that would go into this slide here, Councilman Neese also asked me who would I envision administering this endowment. My recommendation would be Partners for Parks. Last year, we have $870,000 in the perpetual care fund at the cemetery. We got about $30,000 from that, which is 3.7%. Even on, low risk to medium risk investments, the stock market's generated 10% for the last 100 years, no matter what's been going on. That's about 3 times what we're able to get through our constricted investment that we can do. But Partners for Parks would not be, they would not have those same constrictions and could get us a better return on the investment. So that would be my recommendation. Just to go with some examples here of things of how we could different sponsorship recognitions, and really we say sponsorship recognitions. We're kind of we're talking about advertising. Really is what we're talking about. But 500,000 summer activities get distributed. There's 80 pages in those. That's plenty of opportunity, and that's just paper. Then there's electronically it's distributed. Given all the elementary schools, Simply Local magazine. Our winter one still gets 50,000 guides get distributed, but they're smaller. It's 32 pages. So all our programs, from Rec to You to all our sports leagues to our summer camps to our senior wellness classes, I think those are all opportunities, like I said, for companies to reach potential customers. And then through the activity guide, social media, and then some examples here of, staff T-shirts and youth basketball, or youth sports. Events, I've been doing this since I started the Patriot Run. I've been doing this. So some of these things are things we're already doing. Honestly, I kind of learned on the go, and I'm still not that good at it. If we had somebody dedicated to it and professional in this, I'm sure they could do much better than me just fumbling about trying to find sponsors. But this is what I've been using the last 2 years. I've been able to cover the cost of the race, and then everything we make from the proceeds goes into our Patriot Run Fund with Partners for Parks. Same thing with Arbor Day, same thought process there. And refresh the rims. Staff uniforms, our vehicles. Like I said, we travel 200,000 miles on Billings roads every year. I think plenty of opportunity there to reach customers. So I gave this brief to the park board about a month ago, and they were all excited and all on board with me up until this point. they were not super excited about putting corporate branding in our parks, which I understand. I get it. We got complaints when we put the library book in Castle Rock Park. Not everybody would be happy about it, but I think we'd be missing a huge opportunity if we ignored that portion of it. And I mean, really, we're talking about naming rights here, right? Essentially. And I think with all the locations, there's a huge opportunity there, and that would be honestly, I think a bulk of our sponsorship deals would be through those locations. I certainly understand the hesitation, but I think they're big opportunities. And just a couple examples of what we've got the community gardens, could definitely be one. Our parks, and I guess that one of the big questions to you folks here tonight is that something we would want to see, or not want to see, would tolerate seeing, is Bank of America sign on Castle Rock Park. Rose Park Pool, is PetSmart sponsoring at one of the dog parks, or all the dog parks. I don't know. Our community centers, our playgrounds, and mind you, there is already sponsorship going on in our parks. Our little leagues, youth football, they are already getting sponsors and putting sponsorship signs in our parks. So that is one thing that we would have to be mindful of. We won't want any conflict there, but this is something that is already happening. All of our courts and our structures, our concession stands and shelters. And I put this picture up here. I left it in here intentionally. If I was Cisco, I would not be happy if my sign was on that building right now with the paint chipping, paint peeling off. There's definitely improvement that needs to be done to that building. So with this program, even if it's not explicitly stated, implicitly it's gonna come with expectations. I think probably we would want to see written into any sponsorship agreement that a portion of that will be used to paint or for upkeep, to make sure things look presentable, and people want to sponsor those things. They're not run down looking and in bad shape. At lower levels, and this is one thing we're seeking now. Adoption of flower planters and gardens. Where somebody will adopt. Those are the planters at the cemetery, the new planters at the cemetery. If we could get people to adopt them, and they do the weekly maintenance and planting and all that, take some of the burden off the staff. And then much like adopt a highway program, adopt a trail program for litter removal, and then we'll come and put sign recognition up, recognizing those folks for doing that. Let's see if I had any. Councilmember Neese also asked me what I expected to get out of this. I think Met brings in about $200,000 a year for their advertisement program. I believe, like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but I believe that we have more valuable advertising space than the Met does on some buses and bus stop benches. So I don't think 400 a year would be unrealistic goal to shoot for. And there are some limitations to it. The one for example, would be South Park Pool. If that's funded through bonding, we can only get 10% sponsorships for the life of that bond. So if we bond $10 million for the life of that bond, we can only get $1 million in benefit from it. So there is some, but that, as far as that particular limitation goes, that's the only dealer park. It's maxed out. Its sponsorship capability for the next 4 or 5 years, they can't get any more sponsorship money. But so that is what I had for you folks. Like I said, any Any guidance you could provide would be great, but more importantly, support to proceed with this.
Thanks. Brandon, I think this is a great idea. Fully supportive of taking this all the way to all levels in what you presented. I mean, I think the reality is we got a funding shortfall, and this is a very creative way to try to find ways to supplement what we can't supplement through tax dollars. So for me, I'm 100% supportive of furthering the investigation in this. I'd be careful about taking this out to a private contract in running that, and I'd have some further conversations with Kevin and with the Met based on what they experienced for a lot of years with that contract and how that's changed, being they brought it close to home and manage it closely internally. I like the idea of an endowment so that we have a steady build base in thinking about that endowment process. I'd really encourage you to think about creating an endowment cap. Like when we build this up to a certain level, that's when the cap stops. Then we peel off the revenue from the endowment and new revenue goes out and direct investment that way. But those are going to be numbers that you guys in parks are going to have to work through and figure out what that looks like. And those endowment caps and things like that can change certainly. But I think this is a great creative idea to look at other ways to supplement parks. I'm not a parks purist about naming parks or things like that, or sponsorship levels. I think we have to look at every opportunity, whether we actually take it to that level or not. We can decide that later. But to take that completely off the table this early in the conceptual conversations, I think would be a grave mistake. I mean, we have to look at all the opportunities that are out in front of us to be the best stewards we can of taxpayer dollars. I think this is a great idea. So kudos to you and the team for thinking outside the box, bringing this to us. I'm 100% supportive of whatever you need to proceed forward with this plan from my perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I do appreciate your thoughts and perspective, and thanks for bringing this around too as well. And I think the Partners for Parks is a good idea for the organization to hire staff. It's we just have a partial FTE. It's really hard to do that, but then this kind of fills out so you can have a full FTE, and you have an organization that's exists to raise money, and so they have the kind of expertise and interest in doing that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I am supportive in general. I mean, I guess I have some concerns about commercialization of parks, but I'm not really like, what that means to me is not having like large billboards. I think it's how it's kind of framed. It's not probably like Pioneer Park by Exxon or something like that. It's more Exxon or something else. I guess Exxon's not around here anymore, but PAR is supporting these particular tennis courts or something like that. I think it's a little more professional and discreet and not large sort of billboard. I think Councilmember Neese brings up an interesting idea. I mean, there's probably, I don't know if we want to have casinos or perhaps vape shops or something like that, advertising. So that's going to be thought through. But I'm supportive of the idea in general. I think it's a good one. Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, Brandon, great job. Really good food for thought, and I appreciate you bringing it kind of in the concept stage so we can just kick some ideas around. A couple of things that I would add to what's been said, or maybe just ask questions about. I'd be interested to know from some fundraising professionals how critical it is to potential sponsors to actually have their logo displayed versus their name displayed. So, you know, I can imagine, like at Castle Rock Park, for example, maybe there's just a very nice sort of info board up front where we list the people who've sponsored the park and its amenities and all those sorts of things. But I also want to know if it's really critical to sponsors in general to have their logo displayed. So I think understanding that a little bit more is important. I think we need to be really thoughtful about the value of these opportunities. If there's going to be an endowment created, I mean, obviously we'll have to reinvest the proceeds for a while, but in order to generate $1 million a year, you're going to need 20 to 25 million in principal. And so I think it's important to think big and ensure we're making the right kind of ask. You know, naming rights at Metro Park are $1 million a year. So let's not underbid. I mean, you know, I think that's a very different facility, but let's not underbid the potential here. Let's make sure that we've talked to people who are fundraising professionals who can give a good sense of the value of these sponsorship opportunities. And then I think we should be creative. I also would not take anything off the table at the outset, although I will just say the one that concerns me the most is sponsoring the vehicles. And I think, again, we just need to think through the branding. I don't want to be, if heaven forbid a parks vehicle were to run into something, I don't want Lithia Toyota to be blamed for that, right? So I think we have to think through the branding a little. And I think you're completely spot on by saying that for particularly large requests, a portion goes into the endowment and a portion goes to maintenance of the amenity. I think that's a very wise strategy. So I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation. I think we should have this conversation a lot and move this forward. Thank you for bringing it to us tonight.
I mean, it's a good question, and it's always going to depend on any case law out there that's addressed these situations. But, you know, corporations, you can't discriminate against corporations. So that's my first thought. Like, you can't, they're not going to have any kind of protected class arguments there. But I'd have to look into that a little bit further in this specific arena.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Brandon did have another question regarding, you didn't address this, but do you have any examples of other cities that have done this for their parks department?
I didn't pull 'em, I didn't write them down here, but I did find several cities that either did or were exploring having the same conversation we are. I wasn't able to find any financials on that, on how they have done.
Okay, thank you. I echo what Councilmember Assenleiner and Owen said on this. I think this is a great idea. I think we need to move it forward. I think legal needs to get involved sooner than later to find out, can we limit that? I mean, we limit how close, a casino or liquor store can be near different areas. And so I don't see why we couldn't do that for our parks too. These are where the kids are playing. We're not going to want to advertise, vaping and drinking and all that stuff right in the park. So I also would maybe take, again, the idea that our property or our assets are worth a lot. I think that people go there, especially in the summertime. They like to do that. Trails, same thing. We have difficulty maintaining trails, and that would be another one. If a more major corporate sponsor wants to pay for the trail maintenance, great, that'd be perfect. So the other thing that I think you want to be concerned about is how much money, the risk, offsetting the risk. I mean, you talk about 10% of the marketplace. That's great, but that's not the kind of numbers you're going to get in endowments. There's also another good avenue with endowments that you can explore as far as the legacy. For people donating at their life end. And so those are the kind of things that you want to also look at, because yeah, corporate sponsors are great and they can build up into the endowment, but you can have, to get to that 25 million that you need to look at, bigger areas. And I think that's where the professional people will really help you with that. And I guess the last thing I was thinking was, I don't think we need to want to start another whole marketing department on this. I mean, we already have the Met who purchased the marketing department to do their marketing. Now, you have some nice little pictures here, but that, again, as Councilmember Owen said, the sponsors are going to want to put their logos on. They're going to want their names the right way, the right colors. I mean, all of that stuff is their brand, and they got to make sure it is. So I think we use our own internal marketing department now that we already have. I mean, they're supposed to be the experts on how to market it. I wouldn't say they're the ones who are going to maybe sell it. They're going to be ones to look for those sponsors and donors. But I think that they're going to have some good ideas for how to, but I wouldn't recreate the wheel, because we already do that now. That's my suggestion. But yeah, I would say let's go ahead and see where legal says we can do. And again, I'm not concerned about brand at Castle Rock Park. If Bank of America wants to build us a swimming pool and a rec center up there, then by all means, we'll give them a big sign.
So in terms of where we go, I think to what Councilmember Neese said, let's get some research and let's maybe talk about this again in a quarter or so, in 90 days-ish. I would also ask that you check with the folks at Billings Community Foundation and Montana Community Foundation, because they administer tax credits for major gifts. And let's just figure out if we can incorporate that nexus in a way that makes sense.
Council, I don't have much at all tonight, other than Chris, the mayor, and Andy are up in Helena, and they've been kind of working the circuit in legislative halls. And then specifically tomorrow, they're going to testify in Bill 251, I believe, that's in the Senate. And so we'll wait to hear kind of the results of that back. But I don't know if anybody on the legislative committee has further on that.
Mike. The only thing I'd add to that is last week I did get in touch with the governor's legislative liaison on Friday to talk specifically about those two taxation bills. And they are aware, they were not aware until the bills came out, that we have a mill cap issue. So they're aware, they're willing to work with us, was the indication that I got. But we have to be active and engaged in that conversation with solutions. Senator Hertz and Representative Jones are the two that I believe Chris and Andy are specifically setting up meetings with while they're there. Those are the two to drive whatever changes we're going to propose. So we just need to be actively engaged in those conversations. I think Chris and Andy are doing that here the next couple days. They're aware that we're not intending to slight Billings, was the promise that I got. So they're trying to come up with some fixes for us so that we don't take it in the shorts on this deal. But the caveat of that entire conversation is this can't be a pass the bill, Billings is exempt, and the residents of Billings are the only people in the state of Montana that don't get property tax relief. So we have to come up with some level of solution that also gives our residents property tax relief. And I think everybody at this table also agrees with that. But we gotta be creative about that. And that may mean we start to put ourselves legislatively in the same box as every other city, even though we operate under a different set of ARM rules. So we may have to legislatively accept some type of a cap on increases in revenue that match the same increases in revenue all the other cities have to live in. So we may have to live in that 3%, 3.5% tax increase gap that every other city does, even with our charter being what it is, which, if you look 2 years back, would have really capped what we saw in an increase in our budget. I think that's a fair trade versus what we're going to see, but we got to, that has to be vetted in a lot more depth. So that's the level of conversation that I think has been going on around those two bills. That's as much as I know at this stage. Yes.
Nothing in particular. We've just got, we do have a custodial contract on the next council business session on there, and I think, yeah, no other real highlights. So I will comment, because I've been texting back and forth with people on Zoom and then watching on Community 7. If you can hear yourself over the speakers, you're probably too close. And that's why you're getting that really loud pop. When you're hearing me like this, they can hear very well on Community 7 and on Facebook, and all the, and the streaming on Zoom. But when you do get real loud and I can start to hear myself, you're too close. So if we can just kind of keep that in mind, these microphones are a little different than the ones that we have up at the dais, so it might take a little bit of getting used to, but just keep that in mind, and it might help us out.